You have now entered the Oval Office of Talk Radio for the Gulf Coast with Carl Gallups and Freedom Friday. Carl doesn't need a teleprompter. He actually knows the difference between right and wrong, and the difference between common sense and political correctness. He is on a first-name basis with God. What a refreshing place to be. Now, here's Carl Gallups.
All right. Welcome back, Gulf Coast. Welcome back, America. And we're broadcasting live this afternoon, the Oval Office of Gulf Coast Talk Radio. Brandon Big B is my co-host today in the studio. Brandon, glad you could be with us again today.
Great to be here, brother. I appreciate it.
It's always good to have you with us. And our world-famous producer, Mallory Bardwell. She is pushing the buttons and turning the knobs, and she's answering the phone. If you want to be a part of today's show, of course, 850-623-1330. And we're honored. We're glad that you're listening to us today. We've got a great show for you. Stay with us for the whole 2 hours. Segment by segment, we'll be bringing on guests, and we'll be talking about things that you probably won't hear on your mainstream media tonight. I mean, you go home, you turn on Fox, CNN, CBS, ABC, NBC, what's the others?
None worth mentioning.
None of them worth. I mean, you're not going to hear this stuff, but we're going to be on the cutting edge of bringing you information that you need to know. Now, my first guest for this first segment is Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin. He is retired from and he was a United States Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence under President George W. Bush from 2002 until 2007. And during his 36-year career in the military, he spent 13 years in the Delta Force. You've heard of the Delta Force. That includes 2 years as its commander. And he was involved in numerous high-profile missions, including the 1980 Iran hostage rescue attempt, the 1992 hunt for Pablo Escobar in Colombia, and the Black Hawk Down incident in Mogadishu, Somalia. He is an author, and he teaches at Hampden-Sydney College in Virginia, and he is currently Executive Vice President at the Family Research Council, and that is General Jerry Boykin. General Boykin, thank you so much for being on Freedom Friday today. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be with you.
Well, it is our honor, and we've got a great audience from coast to coast, and we have an international audience and podcast and a Simmons News and Ministry network on which this will be broadcast and rebroadcast. So you'll reach a big audience through this broadcast, and we're so honored that you're with us. I brought you on because I've known of you for a long time, and I've listened to you on a lot of talk radio, and I've seen you on television. I think just recently, weren't you on Huckabee on Fox? I think Sunday, weren't you?
Yeah, I did Huckabee last weekend.
Yeah. I knew I had seen you just recently, and I know that you are also a brother in the Lord, and of course I'm a pastor, and we make no apologies for that, and come from a biblical worldview, and I know you do as well. But you have a very, very distinguished military career. You have an analytical mind, and you speak as factually as you know how, and very forthrightly, and I admire that in you. And I brought you on because I've been reading several articles, some that have made some headline articles, in which you have been very outspoken concerning some things that have disturbed me for a long time, and some things that we have been reporting quite heavily on right here on Freedom Friday. And I wanted you on because as I was reading those articles, I said, well, this guy, he gets it. And I mean, you've kind of been on the inside. Not only that, but you get it. The first thing I wanted to ask you about was my concern and the concern of millions of Americans about this Muslim Brotherhood infiltration in Washington, D.C., within our own government. And I suppose, I want you to do most of the talking, but I've got to say this. I think when it really, really hit me between the eyes was, of course, the whole Abedin, Anthony Weiner thing. That kind of brought it into perspective for me when I started investigating who Abedin was and all of her connections. But then, when Michelle Bachmann brought forth letter from her Security Committee on Congress with 5 other congressmen, brought forth this concern that we had Muslim Brotherhood people involved in our government in high places, and she was slapped down that very same day, not by the leftist media, not by the left-wing politicians, but by so-called conservatives. Marco Rubio, John Boehner, John McCain. They were the first ones in the media to slap her down, and that freaked me out. I knew we had a problem then. What do you know about this?
Well, yeah, it's a great example of exactly what's happening in our government today, and And by the way, just let me add to the story you just told. She and the other four, even though they were rebuked and rebuffed by their own party, won their races by pretty good margins. Hers was probably the closest, but people like Louis Gohmert won with like 68% of the vote. So the people get it, even if the Congress doesn't. The reality is that our current administration, and frankly, the last two administrations, have had a blind spot when it comes to the Muslim Brotherhood in America. And we're not just talking about all Muslims in America. We're talking about the Muslim Brotherhood and its network in America that is very prolific, pervasive. It's part of our government today. And if you look at, for example, the Department of Homeland Security, two of the senior policy advisors there are known to be connected to the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah.
If you look at the fact that Council of American Islamic Relations between 2009 and 2012 had 20 visits to the White House. And they are an unindicted co-conspirator from the Holy Land Foundation trial.
This is unbelievable. And let's let our listeners know that the Muslim Brotherhood was orchestrated. It was organized in 1928. Folks, 1928, after World War I, right before World War II, with the express purpose of destroying Jews, destroying the nation of Israel, if there ever would be a nation of Israel, and of course now there is, and that's their whole purpose, and also to destroy the United States from within by methods of infiltration. They've been talking about that openly, been writing to it for years. So General, I've got to ask, well, you said the last two administrations, and you're correct, but the Clinton administration is the one that brought Abedin over right out of Egypt. And she has her father, her brother, her mother, all of them directly tied to the Muslim Brotherhood. And then, of course, she was Hillary Clinton on her staff when she was First Lady. And then when she's Secretary of State, she's either Chief of Staff or Assistant Chief of Staff to Hillary Clinton. What is the Clintons and the Bushes and the Obama fascination with Muslim Brotherhood, this avowed, known terrorist organization? What's the fascination?
Well, I wish I could answer that, and it is an absolute mystery to me as to what their fascination with these people are. But I mean, why would John McCain come out against these five members of Congress that were simply saying, find out how Huma Abedin got a security clearance, the highest security clearance?
Right.
Anybody that had any connections to a terrorist organization or an individual associated with terrorism would never get a security clearance. So why does Huma Abedin have one? You need to figure this out. They were writing to the Inspector General when they wrote this letter that got so much bad publicity for all of them. I can't explain to you what the fascination is, other than to say they have an absolute blind spot to the realities of what these people are. I mean, think about Benghazi, and immediately they blamed some filmmaker rather than acknowledging that this was the Muslim Brotherhood. This was Al-Qaeda, which is an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood that did this. And let me say one final thing. To tell you how bad it is, the week after Nadal Hassan killed 13 people at Fort Hood, Texas, the very next week they had a guy named Louis Safi, who is a known Muslim Brotherhood operative. They are teaching troops that were deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan, teaching them about the culture of the Middle East and about Islam. A known Muslim Brotherhood terrorist a week later.
Yeah. Well, I remember that, and that is absolutely just dumbfounding to me. Unless, I mean, they're either entirely and completely stupid, or they have an agenda. I can't think of a middle ground. Can you? I mean,
I can't think of a middle ground. There is an agenda. It's not because they're stupid. It's not because the information is not there. There is an agenda, and I can't identify it. Now, what I will tell you is there's an awful lot of petrodollars that come into America that support the Democratic Party, that supported Barack Obama in his run for office. So there's a lot of petrodollars coming in, and I think that has to have a major impact on where they come out on this.
I agree, and I can't help but to believe, and you don't have to comment on this, this is just my opinion, I can't help but to believe there's not a lot of petrodollars going into the Republican Party as well because of the Bush's fascination with Saudi Arabia, and of course they've got money and investments over there, but also we get back to this Michelle Bachmann incident, and as we said, the first people that slapped her down were all Republicans, and several of them were supposedly the darlings of the conservative movement at that time, Marco Rubio and John Boehner. And now Marco Rubio, it seems like people have forgotten what he did. Now Marco Rubio, people are hailing him as, maybe the savior of the Republican Party, and I'm screaming into the microphone, don't you remember what he did to Michelle Bachmann about the Muslim Brotherhood?
Well, you're absolutely right, and there were others too. But you see, Michelle Bachmann is such a warrior.
Yes,
she has just such a warrior spirit about her that she's willing to suffer through the wrath of others around her that have agendas or that just simply don't get it, in order to make sure the truth comes out. And I have a deep respect for her. But I'll tell you something else about Michelle. In 2012. Someone called me and said that Robert Mueller just let the Islamic Society of North America expunge 1,000 pages from the training curriculum for the FBI on Islamic terrorism. In other words, it was the training curriculum for how they actually train FBI agents on Islamic terrorism, and ISNA, Islamic Society of North America, complained about it. They wanted to review it and expunge what they found objectionable, so they did. Well, I called Michelle. She went over and actually sat down and looked through the 1,000 pages there with two of her aides, and she came back and told me there was nothing in there that was not straight out of the Quran or the Hadith.
Wow.
And when I asked them why they expunged it, they had no answer other than that the Islamic Society of North America found it objectionable. Let me remind your listeners.
Wow.
ISNA was an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation trial in 2008. They're known to be connected to the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah, and I appreciate that reminder, and these are things that we have been screaming right here on Freedom Friday, and it's such an honor to have you on here today, General Boykin, to put the punctuation mark on this. Listen, we're going to have to take about a 2 or 3 minute time out, General Boykin. When we come back, I want to ask you about this military purging that's been going on. We've been following that closely and reporting on it, so thank you for being with us today. All right, welcome back, Gulf Coast. Welcome back, America. And this is Carl Gallups, and Brandon Gallups is my co-host this afternoon. Mallory Bardwell, world-famous producer. My guest this afternoon is Lieutenant General retired Jerry Boykin. And as I introduced in the top of the hour, he was the United States Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence under President George Bush, 2002 to 2007. 36-year military career, 13 years of it in the Delta Force. He is currently an author and teaches at Hampden-Sydney College in Virginia, and he's also the Executive Vice President at the Family Research Council, and he is our special guest today. General Boykin, again, thank you for being with us this afternoon.
Glad to be with you.
Yeah, it's our pleasure to have you. Folks, let me remind you, you're in the Oval Office of Gulf Coast Talk Radio, and you can connect with us on the Internet anytime by going to carlgallups.com or 1330weby.com. And at both places, you can also find podcasts of the show and all of the segments of it. Of course, you can listen to us on the black box called the radio, and you can also listen to us by smartphone application, TuneIn Radio app, and several other apps. Just look us up, 1330WEBY. Take us with you wherever you go. General Boykin, let's get back to the discussion. I'm going to turn this segment over to Brandon Big B for just a moment, because he has done a lot of investigation and research and commentary on this military purging that, I guess every administration does some of this, but this has been the word purge. I mean, it has been a purge, and it is frightening. It is a lot of people. It's very disconcerting. So I'm going to turn over. Brandon Big B, what's your questions for General Boykin?
Yeah, General Boykin, first of all, it is an absolute honor to be able to speak with you today, and appreciate the time. But, I first started digging into this in September of last year, when the story of the missing nukes kind of started getting out there, and then through digging into that is when I started to come across several generals, particularly to the nuclear arsenal, that had been relieved of their duty and or transferred. And then as I dug deeper, just found a number of high-ranking military officials, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but that number is over a couple of hundred at this point that have been relieved of their duties by this administration. And my question to you is, do you think that this is a deliberate move? And I know that you have spoken to this, so what's your opinion on that?
Well, first of all, it is a deliberate move. Some of these people needed to go. Some of them were involved in things that were just absolutely unacceptable, adultery, prostitutes, a variety of things.
Right.
No question they needed to go, but there are others that are just unexplainable. But here's what you have to ask yourself. How did these people that have demonstrated such poor behavior, how did they get into these positions?
Yeah.
And the answer is that the purging is not what you see, it's what you don't see. It's the officers coming up that are leaving early because they're being either given a clear signal that there's no place for you because you don't fit the mold, you won't support the agenda, so we're moving less qualified, less capable, and people with less character into these senior positions. Or these younger people are seeing on their own that they don't want to be in the upper echelons because of the agenda that is being played out right now, and they're leaving on their own. So there is a purging. I can't explain it all, but there's a lot of people that have left for unexplained reasons. But those that left for disciplinary reasons because of poor performance and bad character and just downright disgusting things, they never should have been in those positions to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I would agree with you on that. Obviously, we are all human and we all err, so there are going to be people in high-ranking positions that do make terrible mistakes and have to be relieved of their duties. But I have to wonder this, too, what you said about a lack of character that we see rising to the top in many of those positions. And I can't help but wonder if that has anything to do with the outright attack on Christianity that we have also seen inside the military over the last several years in particular.
There's a direct correlation between the two.
Yes.
There is an outright assault on Christianity primarily. I mean, that's almost the only religion that's being discriminated against in the military. There's an effort to reduce all influence of Christianity or the Christian faith in our military today, and that's why you are seeing a lot of these people that are moving up are people that have bought into that agenda, people that, and I won't say whether they're people of faith or not, but they've bought into the agenda of purging Christians out of the military.
Yes.
And the attack is beyond what most Americans can even imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your stance on that and your willingness to be so bold in taking that stance. Yeah. And we've only got a couple of minutes left, General, but that actually is a great segue into my next question that I want to ask you, because you recently made some what turned out to be controversial statements concerning the second coming of Christ.
Yeah, but we loved them. They weren't controversial.
We don't think they're so controversial here, but you use the example of just that Jesus was a man, that he was a man's man. He wasn't a wimp, and that we need more men, and particularly Christian men, as leaders in the world today. And you went on to say that, in your opinion, after researching and reading and digging into Revelation 19, that when Jesus returns, that he will return with an AR-15.
Love that.
And so we just want to get your maybe a little explanation on how you came to that.
Yeah, the leftist bloggers didn't like that one bit. I was actually speaking at a conference in Dallas for David Barton. Glenn Beck and I and Governor Rick Perry were speaking. And I was talking to state legislators from across the country, and I was making a joke is what I was doing. I was saying, Exodus 15:3 says the Lord is a warrior. It says in Revelation 19, when he comes back, he's coming back as a warrior carrying a mighty sword. And I said, in fact, the way the technology has changed, the sword will probably be an AR-15. And
I love it.
And then David played that on his radio program, and of course the left is always looking for something to go after.
So. We were fist pumping when we saw it.
No doubt. And again, we appreciate your boldness in taking those kind of stands. We've often made the point right here that you may get scolded these days for talking religion and politics in the same sentence, but the one thing Jesus always did was upset the political and religious elite of his day, and so why not follow in those footsteps? Let's challenge them.
Listen, that's exactly what Jesus did. He challenged every law in the land. I'm so tired of people, particularly Christians, telling me that Christians shouldn't get involved in politics.
Yeah,
well,
thank you.
then exactly who should? Do you think
Yes.
we should? I mean,
That's right.
you know, Psalm 94 says, "Who will rise up
That's right.
against this evil?" For
That's right.
and if that's not the
good.
Christian church, then who is it?
That's good. That's
right.
good.
Thank
That's
you,
a good,
brother.
That's a good way to end this segment. General Boykin, God bless you. Thank you so much. You have graced our presence today, and if you would be gracious, we'd love to have you come back in the future.
I'll be glad to be with you. Thanks a lot.
Okay, fantastic. We will have you back. Thank you as well. Well, that was our guest for the first segment, General Jerry Boykin. And we've got a great show for you this afternoon. You don't want to miss it. Mike Shoesmith's up. Dr. Grace is up. Brandon Big B's got some commentary and some investigation. So glad that you're with us this afternoon. We will be back after this brief time out. Let me remind you, go to carlgallups.com, carlgallups.com. There you can find everything about this show. Go to Freedom Friday link. You can listen live, check out our podcast, everything about me, my ministry, the videos, the books that I've written, everything's right there at carlgallups.com. We'll be back after this brief time out.